Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Christina Langell. It's now 17 days past June 30th, and we still don't have a state budget. But there was some movement in the House of Representatives earlier this week. Tell us more about what they came up with.
Yes, so the House Democrats basically put together their plan for a budget. It's about $1 billion under the proposed budget from Governor Josh Shapiro. So there was, some scaling back from that plan, but it was still for House Republicans way over their spending limit. They said, we don't have the money. We don't have a plan for the revenue to come in for this money. So there was still pretty broad opposition to the budget, but because the House Democrats have a majority, and in fact, 3 Republicans voted with them, so it was even more than their majority, they were able to pass this budget plan through. But I think all parties kind of agreed that this was a necessary step forward, that you can't hold the state hostage and just not have a budget, but that for their part, Republicans weren't happy with it as a deal.
I'm not surprised with our divided legislature now. They are generally very unhappy with each other's priorities. What is interesting is that, like you said, it's $1 billion less than what Governor Shapiro wanted. He is getting close to what he wanted for those top categories like education. We still don't know, as far as mass transit funding, what that number is going to be, because that's really Shapiro's big ask here, and House Democrats are really on his side about it. And like you said, Senate Republicans, they don't want to spend even close to that number. They have a lot of concerns about our budget deficit. In fact, that's always their number one concern. There's a couple $1 billion gap between what we are bringing in and what they want to spend. It's been that way for years and years and years. Things change economically that we can't foresee, such as during COVID, how we got a bunch of money from the federal government. Now we're kind of in the opposite issue, right? The One Big Beautiful Bill Act changed a lot of funding for the states, particularly around Medicaid and SNAP. And what it did was shift a lot of the responsibility to the states on how to manage their programs, how to implement these new work requirements. And even though they get the majority of their funding for these programs from the federal government, it's unclear how they're going to implement that while still maintaining that budget. Human services spending is, by and away, the largest spending area for us on the budget. So it makes a really large impact. And it stands to reason that part of the delay was that Congress hadn't gotten a budget until within the last week or two. But now there seems to be some kind of movement. The Senate did come back for 2 days this week. They said that they're here to move bills around, kind of position us once we get a budget, but what's in the current budget is likely not going to be the same, but they haven't really indicated what all they want to change, other than the fact that they have questions about mass transit, which aren't in this budget. They would like more school choice spending, for tax credits, and that they would prefer to see skill games tax revenue as a source of filling this budget deficit. But there's just no agreement on what that rate is going to be. And so we're really, even though we have a bill moving, it doesn't feel like all that much has changed, right?
Right. I would definitely agree with that, especially, hearing you list those priorities. They are specifically called out by Democratic leadership in the House. First of all, Democratic leadership said, hey, we tried to pass adult use cannabis to make a difference in this revenue, and the Senate killed it. They also said it's an absolute non-starter to pay more for essentially private schools, for kids to go to private schools with school choice, when we still have to work out all these issues with our public school system and fund that. And they said that SEPTA, specifically SEPTA, is an issue that is actually separately on the Senate's table right now. They have a bill from the House that would not add any additional tax or anything like that. It would take part of existing sales tax, I think 1% more, and funnel that towards mass transit spending. So that's been waiting for the Senate to consider for a while.
And what's interesting here too is every governor kind of has their different way of handling budget negotiations. I think some prefer to be a lot more hands-on, both in the public eye and behind the scenes. And with Shapiro, the way that it's gone the last two sessions is he's really stood back and encouraged the House and the Senate to figure something out and then put it on his desk. That doesn't mean he's not behind closed doors with them trying to figure things out. And from an outside perspective, he's been pretty successful in getting what he wants. Part of that is that House Democrats have a very, powerful position as far as controlling that chamber. But like I've said on this show before, Shapiro often gets what Shapiro wants, and he really wants this mass transit funding. And I think that Republicans, their whole issue in the Senate and this is interesting because it's moving off of we just flat out don't support it to we don't support the way it was put in the bill, but they were bothered in the adult use cannabis bill that it would make it a state-run system, kind of like our liquor stores. They didn't want to see it run that way. So to me, that indicates some sort of movement in their frame of mind as far as when we finally get to that priority, how they want to do it. But it seems that skill games, taxing those are the higher priority. And so they kind of have to pick and choose what they want. In the end, I think that what we've seen from the House is close to what we will get. But this mass transit piece and the skill games tax, I would wager, is what's holding us up now. So we will continue to monitor this situation, and hopefully we have a budget here soon and we don't continue to be held hostage over these negotiations. But to keep up with this, follow us at thecentersquare.com/Pennsylvania.